today, so we'll just move that. Close the door, Glenn. I think we're good to start. Okay. So it's 6:01, so I think we'll get started. No, it's only 5.
5:01.
Oh, sorry. God. I don't want to. It's okay to get started though, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I hereby call to order the January 4th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Frisco Planning Commission. Who's doing minutes today?
Emma.
Emma, would you please call it? Yeah, you say it.
Commissioner Connolly.
Here.
Commissioner Day.
Here.
Commissioner Forsyth.
Here.
Commissioner Lesmes.
Here.
Commissioner Stabile.
Here.
And Commissioner Tame.
Here.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is the approval of the December 7th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do we have any motion on the minutes from December 7th, 2023?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Being none, the motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is public comments. So I'm gonna do a little blurb first. This is the meeting of the Frisco Planning Commission. Any public comments that anyone in the audience may wish to make on a subject that is not on this evening's agenda may be made now. Citizens making comments should state their name and address for the record, be topic specific, and limit comments to no longer than 3 minutes. No action is taken on public comments. Planning Commission will take all comments under advisement, and if the response is appropriate, the individual making the comment will receive a formal response at a later date. Does anyone wish to make any comments on items not on this evening's agenda? I don't see anyone wanting to make comments in the audience. And I don't see any raised hands on the screen. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda. At this time, I would like to open the public meeting portion of the Planning Commission agenda. This commission is appointed and serves as an advisory body to the town council. It has certain final authorities identified in the individual staff reports. For each item on the agenda this evening, a staff report will be presented. After the staff report, planning commissioners will have questions of staff. We will then allow the applicant, if they so choose, to make a presentation. After that, the public will make comment on the application. So the first item on today's agenda is the adoption of Planning Commission Resolution 24-01, a resolution naming the public place for posting notices of Planning Commission meetings for the town of Frisco, Colorado, in compliance with Colorado Sunshine Act of 1972.
And I'll just give you a very quick overview because this has been done every year, the first meeting of Planning Commission. We actually made a change this year due to town council's direction. They have decided to stop posting in the front vestibule or atrium of town hall. They feel no one's really coming in to look. So they have changed their policy and requested the Planning Commission also change theirs. So the resolution is as you always see it. But we actually are stating that public meetings will be notified or noticed legally through electronic, meaning the website. If there's a technical glitch, it will go downstairs. We don't foresee that happening. It hasn't happened in years posting. Everything's already posted online. So we're removing the public posting from front door of town hall. So we wanted to make that everyone aware of that.
Is the physical posting done anywhere else?
It's not anymore, and that's why I wanted to be sure you were aware. Now, that is just for meetings. Any project will still have public abutter notification. It's just advertising when a meeting is held. So we don't, the town staff at the front desk is found people aren't coming in to look at the agenda.
Okay.
And if the public so chooses, they could be on a notification
Yes,
and they could always be notified if they get in that system.
yes, and that's actually a great point for anyone listening, and we have a couple of people, it looks like, from the public that they should always sign up for council, planning commission, arts committee. All of those can be blasted out to everybody's emails and everything. Good point, Eric. Thank you.
Yes, any other questions of Katie?
And now we just need a motion approving resolution 2401.
I'll make a motion approving resolution 2401.
I'll second that.
All in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. All right, and now we are going to move on to planning file number res-23-0002. A final public hearing to request a rezoning from mixed use to planned unit development located at 101 West Main. Or lot B1 West Frisco 70 sub number 2. The applicant is Andy Seville from Alan Guerra Architecture.
And Madam Chair, at this point, I'd like to say I need to recuse from this next agenda item and step away from this meeting.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Andy.
Have
All
fun.
right. Thanks. Okay, so now we'll move on to a staff presentation.
All right. All right, thank you, Lena. Like you stated, tonight we have a rezoning request for 101 West Main Street. A little background and description: the applicant is requesting to rezone the proposed site to planned unit development, or PUD. The purpose of the PUD designation is to provide relief from certain standards of the underlying zone district for projects that provide a community benefit, such as open space or workforce housing. This PUD proposes a minimum of 45 deed-restricted residential dwelling units that will be affordable for households earning up to 80% of the area median income, while additional units may be allowed in up to 100% AMI within the PUD. The existing site is zoned mixed use and consists of the West Main Professional Building. So just to provide a little overview of the process and the timeline. So as you probably remember, in November of last year, the Planning Commission reviewed a sketch plan submitted by the applicant along with this preliminary PUD or rezoning request. Tonight, you see just the rezoning request, and this is because a rezoning application and a major site plan application have two separate approval processes. The rezoning request has two public hearings at Planning Commission, followed by Town Council approval. So tonight, Planning Commission will make a recommendation to Town Council, and then ultimate approval or denial will come from them. And then later we'll have a final review of the major site plan application for 101 West Main. So a few different steps, but hopefully this clarifies the process.
Do we already have sketch on?
Right, yep, so the sketch and preliminary PUD were combined. And then tonight we'll just look at the rezoning.
Okay.
So with that, again, the purpose of a PUD designation is to encourage flexibility and innovation in development projects. This is done by providing relief from underlying zoning standards in exchange for a project that provides community benefit. These are the 10 criteria, approval criteria for PUDs. This was all in your staff report, so I won't go over it, but this is the approval criteria outlined in the UDC. So starting with the proposed PUD community benefit. For this PUD, the applicant is proposing to construct and operate a minimum of 45 deed-restricted affordable units, servicing households up to 80% of the area median income. The PUD also states that all units are available for rent, and then it also allows for minor deviations up to 100% of the AMI without modifying the PUD, and then it also allows for over 45 units. So the sketch plan that you previously reviewed was designed and has 52 deed-restricted affordable units, and those rents are affordable for households earning 30 to 80% AMI, as was proposed at the sketch plan level. So like I said, you'll see that site plan at a future date.
I'm sorry, can you stop me right there?
Yep.
I don't understand.
So the PUD plan states that a minimum of 45 deed restricted units are required for this PUD. It also gives
There's no maximum, just a minimum?
just the
Okay.
minimum. And then so it allows for additional units beyond that. And then it does allow minor deviations up to 100% AMI, does not go over 100% AMI.
So just to clarify, the PUD says 80% up to 100% without modifying the PUD. But then you're saying the site plan has different.
The site plan that you saw at sketch level was 52 units for 30 to 80% AMI.
Just one last thing. So 30 to 80. So if there is 100% AMI, would the average then still be in that 30 to 80 or average has nothing
I'll
to do
have
with
to,
30?
yeah, I'll have to ask, you have to ask the applicant on
Okay,
the average, but again, that average for that site plan is not being reviewed. It's the minimum of 45 deed restricted units
okay,
for this PUD plan.
got it.
So with that, that is part of the proposed community benefit, and then I'll go through per code section on what the applicant is asking flexibility for. This is what you reviewed last time as well. Some things are the same, some things have changed based on discussion with the planning commission. So I'll kind of touch on those and go from there. But starting with ceiling height, the applicant is proposing that first floor building height shall be 9 feet in height where the UDC states that it should be, or it is 10 feet. For residential uses in the mixed use district, the applicant is proposing that ground floor residential uses shall be a permitted use in the PUD designation, whereas typically it's a conditional use. And then for mixture of uses in the mixed use district, the applicant is proposing a minimum of 1,500 square feet or around 3.7% of commercial space provided instead of the standard minimum of 20%. Here we have the proposed parking. So the applicant is proposing to utilize the parking requirements as outlined in the Affordable Housing Incentive Program for the number of parking spaces provided. So the number of spaces are what is in the UDC. However, what is different is that the applicant is proposing 21 spaces on-site and 22 spaces off-site. That's 51% off-site, whereas 20% is allowed per that affordable housing development. And so this is just a snapshot of that parking plan that is in the exhibits of the PUD that was in the packet. The applicant has been working and has worked with Public Works on signage and logistics of the off-site parking and management plan. And Public Works does support the proposed parking. All right, so for landscaping, the PUD plan proposes quantities reduced by up to 20%, reduced size in caliper size, and then an increase in the maximum species mixture. And so these first 3 bullets are what, again, are outlined in the Affordable Housing Incentive Program. So that is aligns with that code incentive. However, what is different is that the applicant removed allowing ornamental grasses as a substitution from their PUD plan. The last time you saw it, they did have that in there based on discussions, they removed that. And just to point out, that was an error in the staff report, so it is removed. And then for snow storage, the PUD plan proposes snow storage accommodated on site at the rate defined in the UDC. So that would be the current rate in the UDC. And then it also states that no snow storage within 15 feet of the 100-year floodplain is allowed. And then that the town engineer may approve snow storage, detention, and water quality facilities between 15 feet and 25 feet from that 100-year floodplain. So again, this has been reviewed and is supported by the town engineer. They have worked with the applicant on an appropriate solution to snow storage. At the last viewing of the PUD plan, the applicant had snow storage offsite that was not supported by staff, and therefore it is removed from the PUD plan. So moving on to non-residential development standards. So typically a mixed-use development would require the development to follow non-residential development standards. The applicant is proposing to utilize the residential development standards. So this is in part because the non-residential development standards have a very specific articulation standard that is based on the length of the geometric plane. And from there requires a specific measurement of the offsets and insets. And the applicant has stated that the requirement is too rigid and costly for their proposed building, and is therefore proposing the residential development standards. The applicant acknowledges that articulation was discussed from the previous planning commission meeting, and the PUD plan now reflects that the development shall meet 4 articulation criteria. This is the same number of building elements required in the residential development standards and goes beyond the criteria required for affordable housing developments. So for an affordable housing incentive program, it allows 2 out of 7 criteria to be utilized for that articulation. And the applicant is proposing that 4 building elements be utilized for articulation. So that's slightly different from the last PUD plan that you saw. And then lastly, we have bulk standards. The applicant is proposing that bulk plan encroachments are allowed up to 1,000 cubic feet per 10,000 square feet of lot area, whereas 500 cubic feet per 10,000 square feet of lot area is permitted through the Affordable Housing Incentive Program. The applicant also states in their PUD plan to allow bulk plan encroachments for livable spaces. So that was discussed at the last planning commission meeting as well, and the applicant went forward with as they had proposed previously based on planning commission comments. So that's really all I have, is just outlining those requests from the applicant. Staff does support the proposed PUD plan that was submitted with the rezoning application. Staff recommends that the planning commission discuss the proposed PUD plan, and after that discussion, recommend approval with conditions, or denial of the application to the town council. And like I was on the slide before, town council will then see that recommendation at the January 23rd meeting, and then they will make their decision at that meeting. Should planning commission find that the application meets the requirements of approval, I have a recommended motion on the screen that can be modified based on discussion. I'm here for questions. I know the applicant is also in the audience and may like to share a few words.
Great, thank you, Emily. At this point, we'll move to commissioner questions of staff. Ira, I think we'll start with you, if that's okay.
That's okay. What if it's not? Anyway, working with Public Works for the management maintenance of the on-street parking, can I call it that?
Yep.
So, do you have any sense as to who would actually be plowing it, or how that works?
So that's the town.
The town would,
Yep.
with
And
an
the-
agreement.
Right. And so there's specific parking signs that were worked on with the town, with Public Works on signage. So removing the cars from Monday at 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. to allow for the plows. Same with Thursday, and going about it that way.
Knowing full well that nobody reads signs. I mean, I would first like to say, a lot of the changes reflect that they're listening to the planning commission comments, which I'm appreciative of. That's all good. And then the one about what code to build under, the non-residential building standards.
Right.
So it's a multifamily building, but it's a residential code.
So it's technically mixed use because it has that 1,500 square feet of
Downstairs office.
non-residential space. So under standard zoning, it would be required to follow the non-residential development standards, which are slightly different from the residential standards. And I actually have a slide here showing that. And so it has specific building articulation requirements in non-residential that's based on the geometric plane in the roof ridge.
Right,
And so it's, you know, for every X amount of feet, you have to have 2 feet in, 4 feet out of a bump out or an offset, which is a very specific standard. Whereas for the residential development standard, it has those building elements listed. So that's the deep eaves, balconies, change in materials, what you typically see for all of the residential development around town. So they are proposing to utilize that, but using 4 criteria, which is what is typically required. If you were to look at the Affordable Housing Incentive Program, it only requires 2 of those building elements. So they're going beyond that affordable housing program and using the standard residential zoning is what they're proposing.
very good. That's it for me.
Thank you, Ira. Candace, any question of staff? Okay. Jessica?
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit of the logic, I guess, behind creating a zoning document where, so I feel like in this PUD, you know, giving a lot to get this, building, right? But the zoning document doesn't align. The standards in the zoning document for the AMIs don't align with kind of what the proposal is. And I understand maybe it's, you know, hey, if we don't get this LIHTC, if we don't get this, then we at least have this property zoned for affordable housing. But there's so much we're giving away that if it's just gonna be 100% AMI housing, and that's what the zoning document says, if the LIHTC doesn't come through, that just gives me concern. So just curious the logic behind that from staff's perspective.
I guess from staff's perspective, and this may have to do with the development agreement, and so I'll have Katie jump in if it does. But it's, you know, based on that minimum requirement of 45 units and, you know, it's 45 units as a minimum. It allows for some flexibility because this rezoning request is, you know, into the future. So I don't know what 20 years from now, those AMIs, what those look like, and allowing for a little bit of flexibility in the PUD so it doesn't have to come back to Planning Commission with a slight minor change is the intent of that. And same with allowing for those, you know, operation agreements to be included into the PUD and having a little bit of flexibility with that.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add is when the original PUD was submitted by the applicant, there wasn't any minimum or any requirements for density or number of units or affordable housing. So I think from staff's perspective, what the planning commission didn't see was us working in the background the last few months with the applicant to get them to even give us, or because we wanted some kind of a commitment. We didn't like not giving away, but allowing the incentives to a project that wasn't going to guarantee a certain amount of units. So staff worked with the applicant to do, and that's where the 45 came up with of required, so that we guarantee we get those 45 deep restricted units. The applicant is still proposing more in the same, pretty much the same project you saw at the sketch plan. They're just trying to cushion themselves based on final logistics of design and construction and engineering. And making sure if they needed to add some change something, let's say the parking wasn't approved by recommended by planning commissioner, council didn't approve it, and they needed more parking, they're gonna lose some units. So we work to make sure we get 45 affordable units. And then as far as the AMI, and I was pointing up, and Emily, and we can also defer this to the applicant. They can probably do it quicker, but I believe there's a limitation on 100% AMI. Where
Up
they
to
can't.
10%, I believe, but
10% is allowed up to 100%.
And
Not,
the other, is there an average?
the PUD doesn't define an average. So it's allowing up to 100% AMI. So with that alone, the average shouldn't be over 100%.
so up to 10%,
10%
correct.
can be at 100%.
I believe the flexibility on number of units that go beyond that, but I might need clarification from the applicant on that
And I'm pulling
10%
up
without
the-
reading through.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't jump on your thing because I.
But it doesn't-
The same lines.
It caps at 100%. So the PUD only states that an minor deviations up to 100% AMI. So it doesn't allow for that 120%. I know that was in discussion at some point for other projects and applications, but that's not with this PUD.
Okay,
And we can tell you, the applicant has financial models, as we're moving forward to apply for LIHTC funding in the next couple of months. So they can definitely give you the clear breakdown they have, and you will, in the meantime, as staff, find out and find and clarify that only 10% of the units can go up to 100%. If so, I think that probably will be a little bit more assuring to you than just all units up to 100%.
so, do you have another question?
I don't, I think we'll come back to this point, but I think you've
I think the
answered it for
applicant
now.
will
The
give us
zoning
good
is different
info
than
and
the,
then-
yeah, the zoning is different than the.
Site plan.
Site plan.
Yeah, and
There's no guarantee. The
So-
only guarantee is the zoning document.
the PUD sets the parameters. So any site plan will have to meet the minimum standards in the PUD plan.
So we are guaranteed to get 45 deed restricted affordable housing units on this property.
Okay, so I get the number, the 52, that those 52 will be deed restricted. Where I'm not clear, and maybe it's in the packet and I just didn't look too quickly, but is there anything in the PUD that restricts the AMIs?
There is, and we will have the applicant state it because it'll be quicker than us.
I have it.
It's
You have
up to 100%.
80 serving households up to 80% of, up to 80.
Mhm.
And then with deviations allowed without modifying the PUD up to 100.
For 10% of the units.
Minor deviations, sorry, yes.
So let's have the applicant reflect
Yeah.
on that, and then you can include that in your discussion, if you
Yeah.
want to bring it up during your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, well, okay.
Do you have a follow-up question?
I guess. If it's a question or a comment, I don't know, to me. When and we made this comment last time that we're giving away so many things and we really wanna crank down on what's being proposed. And yeah, if in the future this deal doesn't work out or whatever, you can also propose modifications to the PUD or what. You know, we don't have to necessarily build in so many ways out. Anyway,
Okay,
so, yeah, we don't have anybody online, right?
we have April.
Oh, April. Sorry, do you have any questions of staff?
I do. So I just wanted to understand when I was reading through the parking requirements, am I understanding correctly, like during the snowy months, you're asking residents not to park between 7 and 10 p.m. or 10 a.m.?
Correct.
And is there any other place on
On
Main
Mondays
Street?
and Thursdays.
Just
2 days a
Mondays and
week.
Thursdays, 2 days a week? Okay. Is there any other place on Main Street where we require that?
So this is something that's new to the town. It actually has been implemented on Third for employee housing. This was the first week that the signs were up and those requirements were, I guess, required. So it is kind of a trial, but there is a project, or, you know, the Mary Ruth Housing is currently utilizing that model.
And do you think, this is maybe out of scope, but do you think that this will be required on Main Street going forward for more parking spaces? It just seems weird to have this one block have this requirement when it's not required anywhere else.
I don't want to take it over from Emily, but I've been involved in more conversations on the town side with Public Works about overall town overnight parking. Tentatively, we are, with Public Works is actually bringing a plan to town council this winter to discuss if the town council wants to consider in certain parts of town or on certain streets, primarily only around Main Street, not looking at residential areas at all. To consider overnight that would work with a plowing management plan that worked for Public Works. So the town is starting to start that discussion with town council. So by having this project and this management plan, along with the one that's been implemented this week over on Third Street, we are kind of like getting the ducks in the row, assuming that some comments we've heard from council make us think we may be having more discussions on that townwide. So it's actually a really great and thoughtful question, April, that we are having those discussions. I can't say what council will say on it because we don't know. But our estimated timeline is gonna be bringing that forward for discussion at the end of February to town council to start that discussion. So yes.
Okay,
it
yeah,
is
that's,
start looking being looked at in townwide, and we are also already getting comments, because I know it's probably where you're going to. On the relocating cars.
right, where do they go?
Yep, so for this project, 101 West Main, it's actually really easy, because the overnight parking, even when it's not allowed, is only not allowed from 2 to 6 AM. So they can actually just, I know it's still you have to do it, but you can move your car right across the street on the other side of Main Street.
Oh, okay,
It's
or
not
can they
permitted.
park on Creekside or will they be towing
Yeah,
on Creekside?
if they're legal striped parking spaces, then they would be able to be moved over there too. Anywhere on town, we only restrict parking 2 to 6 AM.
Okay,
Good question. And sorry, I didn't want to go
No,
business, I had those for you.
and then the other question that I had was around the commercial space. Is that open to any commercial business? I've heard a lot of mention around renting to office space. Is it restricted to a certain type of business?
So the PUD actually has permitted uses listed in the PUD plan. So
Okay,
that could
I can
range
review that.
from commercial uses such as offices, personal services, retail, and a few other types of uses. It does not include restaurants and those types of uses, which is part of the whole building height requirement listed in the code.
Okay. And with that 1,500 square feet, is that going to be multiple offices or one big office, or do we know that yet?
I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had for right now. Thanks.
Thanks, April. Actually, Emily, I forgot that I was gonna ask you these. So, I know you were really specific about what changed in terms of snow storage, and there was another one. So could you walk us through high level, what changed between, preliminary and now in terms of the PUD?
Yep. So I can share my screen again to help with that. Okay, so all of these are the same. Parking is the same, but they tightened up a few of the requests with Public Works on their
Do you,
management.
sorry, while you have the parking plan up, because I know we all got kind of in a deep parking conversation last time, would you just review it just as a highlight
Yep.
to make sure I'm reading?
So I'll start with the quantity, and that's based on per unit, or per bedroom for the development. So the applicant is proposing the parking that would satisfy those that sketch plan that you saw in November. So that's where the number came from them. There's 21 spaces on site. And some of those spaces are the car sharing spaces. And so those are the 1 space equals 4. So that's where they get the 21. And then they have 22 spaces offsite. So there are some existing parking, but then they'll have to create parking spaces. They show in the yellow, the parking reserved for residential. Those will be the spots that are signed with the town approved signage, and that you can actually see on Third Ave, it's up, so it'll be the same signage. And then they allocated the 4 required commercial spaces, and then they have 9 additional unallocated spaces. So those are the residential is all covered, and then again, that will be signed, and then the additional parking spaces will be open for there'll be like other Main Street parking spaces. They will just have the standard parking available for public use, no parking from 2 AM to 6 AM on a daily basis. And we'll follow that standard.
And so why isn't any of the parking, why was there a preference for keeping all of the parking along the south side rather than using anything?
So the 80 West Main development across the street added additional parking spaces, and even though they're not allocated for that development, they were just, constructed with that development. If you want to ask the applicant why they proposed all on that north side, you can do that.
Okay, so so sorry, I didn't understand. So starting with the first number 4, that's red, those 4, 4, 8 plus 5 is 13. Those are all gonna be newly constructed parking spaces by
Mhm.
this development.
Right,
Okay.
so those are not existing right now, so that will require building within the right of way and then extending that pathway. Cause right now it kind of like curves, and so it'll be realigned.
And those will not be overnight. Okay.
The residential ones on Main Street?
No, the
blue and red,
Okay.
commercial and
just the blue and red, just to be clear, those will,
So
so
the
that's very
residential-
limiting for what will be overnight.
The residential yellow is overnight allowed on Main Street and only allowed for this development.
right.
Okay. Question around parking?
No, beyond parking.
Okay.
Do you want me
because
to
we were gonna go
finish
through
Lena's?
what's new,
Okay,
what's
good.
new,
Okay,
what's different.
so this is the same. So landscaping, they removed that ornamental grasses substitution. They just removed that from the PUD plan, so. Slight change there. They removed the language in the PUD plan to allow snow storage offsite. So it has to be on site and then at the rate defined in the UDC. And then, like I said, they worked with the applicant. There are some limitations to the site based on that floodplain and that 25-foot setback. So that's part of the site plan review process on where that will be, or you'll see that at some point, and you saw it at the sketch plan, that 25-foot mark, but so that really limits snow storage. So they're just clarifying that with appropriate water quality facilities, they would be allowed to utilize that area as snow storage when it cannot be used for any type of building or structure. And so with the non-residential, or with the development standards, staff had the applicant clearly articulate piece by piece in the PUD, the development standards. The version you saw before just said that it would meet the residential development standards in the UDC, and we actually had them list out as you would see in the UDC, but just to keep it consistent and clear, the building elements that are required, the roof standards, facade standards, which align with the UDC requirements, but specifically stating it in the PUD, so it's a clear guideline. So that was different, and then the bulk claims stayed the same.
So for the record, the commercial 3.7%.
That remains the same, yeah.
And the AMIs have not changed.
And they added just language to determine that minimum.
Okay. Sorry, Ira, any question?
I just may be digging in the weeds, but I hear that the rent is deed restricted. That's not the right language, is it? I mean, because there's no deed with the rent. That's a lease, and I mean, the rent restriction is not gonna live in a deed somewhere
There's a housing restricted covenant.
Yeah.
On the property,
on the property. And where does that covenant live?
recorded on the
Recorded on
property.
Okay.
Property.
Perfect.
All right. Any other questions, anybody? No? Okay, then we will turn it over to the applicant for a presentation.
My computer kicked me out, sorry about that. Hi, everyone, thank you very much to staff for working with us on this project, as well as for your time, planning commissioners, we appreciate it. We know that this one, it's special, but we're doing something special with it, so we appreciate your patience as we go through different iterations. and Emily's got the presentation up. I think Emily did a great job covering, so I'm gonna kind of go through things fairly quickly, but we are here with questions. We have both Lauren and Mia here representing NHP Foundation. So we're happy to answer any questions you do have for the applicant. And as Emily so clearly stated today, we're talking about the zoning document, and you will see us for final sketch plan as well with buildings that have some changes reflected from your preliminary plan. I just said final sketch plan, that doesn't make sense. Changes from sketch plan to final plan. So the PUD, you know, the big thing is that it would be a minimum of 45 units. We are looking at 52, that's what is now proposed. We really don't anticipate changes from that, but again, whenever we're doing a zoning document, we want to leave ourselves a little flexibility so that we're not in here in front of you amending things, hopefully in at least next 10 years. I hope that this will last 10 years before I ask you. So that's really the big thing, is the perpetuity of housing. And as a result of that, a lot of these asks, numbers 2 through 8, really are aligned with the Affordable Housing Incentive Program. They don't deviate from that, with the exception of the 2 that would have been conditionally used had we gone through mixed use. The conditional uses would be the ground floor residential, as well as the percentage of mixture between residential and non-residential. And then the other big ask is really the on-street parking. So that's why we've moved to a PUD. We do not think that on-street parking to this magnitude is for every affordable housing project in town. We think this makes sense here, which is why we've turned the zoning request into a PUD and moved away from the affordable housing overlay or incentive. So I think Emily really clearly went through the other kind of modifications, but I just wanted to list them out as well and make sure that we're here to answer questions. And when I go through this quick presentation, I'll let Lauren talk about the AMI as well. All right, so here's a cleaned up version of my parking diagram. Hopefully it makes a little more sense now. What we're looking at is that 13 spaces remain public. 4 of them we're counting towards the commercial space, which are the red ones, but they're signed and they're treated just like any other space on Main Street. And then the kind of yellowish color is what would be the permit for this development only overnight. And as April asked, it's just twice a week, people would move their car across the street or to some other quick location, so that snow plowing can remain. We did work closely with Public Works, and on the next page, you'll see kind of that draft of our parking management plan. Oh, the signage is first. So this is the type of signage that will be posted out there, so that we are really specific about permit parking and who's allowed to park when and where. And this is something that we worked closely with Public Works to get to. A little bit more on parking. Part of our parking plan and part of what you see as an attachment on the PUD is a car share plan. A car share plan is the idea that I'm really excited about. It's really an honest way that people could not have a car and still have the ability to get around town. With a car share plan, there's 2 cars that can be shared. And I won't go into all the text, but it is in there. And what that does is means that someone could live here and have a car that they could book and use when they need to without having to own a vehicle. And they will be housed on site. This was that language. I hinted at. I'm not going to read it, don't worry. But this is also in the packet. I will mention that these are drafts, but they are drafts that have been really refined with Public Works at this point. So we feel that they're drafts that are very representative of what will happen. And snow storage, this is another one we work with Public Works on. You can see the kind of orange colored snow storage on the side, on the west side of the property. That's snow storage that's within our property that follows all town guidelines. The red strip on the north edge of the property is snow storage that is in it infringes, not all of it is in the floodplain, but it infringes into the floodplain setback, not the floodplain, the 25-foot floodplain setback. Some of that snow storage infringes into that area. However, none of it infringes more than 10 feet. And this is something that Public Works is comfortable with, and it actually ends up being less than 500 square feet that's intruding into that 25-foot floodplain setback. And that is my quick presentation for you. Thank you. We are here for questions, and I will turn it over to Lauren right away to answer the one question that we know you have, and we'll go back to Anthony.
Thanks, Megan.
Good evening, commissioners. Is this on?
Should be, I think so.
Can you hear me through the mic? Okay, sorry, I just can't hear myself. Lauren Avioli, NHP Foundation. So to restate the question, make sure I'm answering it correctly. Why do we have in the community minimum of 45 units, minor deviations allowed up to 100% AMI, when what we're proposing in the site plan is 52 units with AMI ranges between 30 and 80% and an average of 60% AMI.
That's wonderful. So, yeah, we can start with that one.
So I think Katie and others have alluded to it, but primarily we want to set minimums here in the PUD and provide flexibility in the event that we lose some units due to mechanical spaces, due to some ADA parking spaces we're not accounting for in the right way. Sometimes in the development process, you realize you've forgotten to put some kind of trash room or other kind of mechanical community space like that. So we're guarding against losing a unit, having to come back yet again to the planning commission and to town council for a rezone application. On the AMI percentages, it's the same thinking. If the tax credits don't come through, we still want to make this development work. We still want these units to be affordable and deed restricted. And we could do that through some different mechanisms that don't involve tax credits that might allow us the flexibility to have a couple 100% AMI units, cross-subsidizing our deeper affordable units. And to be able to do that up to a minor amount without having to come back for you for an amendment to the PUD. And I think Emily mentioned a development agreement, and that document plus the site plan is going to include our specific unit mix, AMI levels, and will govern what gets built. So we still will have to amend those documents should we have to make these changes. Having the flexibility on the PUD is just one way to try to minimize the number of times we have to come back and the length of the development process to get this project actually in the ground.
Okay. I think, thank you for your presentation. We'll now do commissioner questions of the applicant, and we are going to start with April, actually.
So, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the non-residential space. So right now, is that space planned to be, for one large or sectioned off into multiple, or do you know yet?
Yeah, it could be either. We don't totally know yet, but the 1,500 square feet is in aggregate. We could put a demising wall in there and have a couple smaller offices. We've been talking with both the town and with the workforce, the state workforce office, about potential users of this space. Something we went over a little bit during the sketch plan and preliminary PUD discussion was what it means to have non-residential space, whether that's commercial or office, in a building that's being financed with low-income housing tax credits, as this one is proposed to be. So that funding program is a state program with a lot of rules and requirements, and it's highly competitive. And the funding is not allowed to be used for any non-residential space. So we have to come to them with a full financing plan for that non-residential space and show them that we have tenants pre-selected to show that we are like minimizing the risk that the commercial space doesn't get built or that it doesn't get tenanted. And that's why we've been working really closely with the town and with the workforce office to understand whether this space would meet their needs, because we would like to be able to show the tax credit agency at the state level that we have potential tenants in mind. So long answer to the question. The short answer is it could be one large workspace, it could be a couple smaller workspaces, depending on the need of the tenant.
Okay, because that helps me a lot. I was worried that we would end up with space that was unused. So it sounds like you're working that problem already.
Yeah, we would also be very concerned about having space that was unused, so.
And then the other question I had was around the car share. The management company oversees the purchase of the cars and how they get checked out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think you're probably alluding to the text in the submittal package, the draft car share agreement or car sharing plan. So the property would enter into an agreement with a car sharing company like Car2Go or Zipcar or some other company like that. And make sure that we had at least 2 car sharing cars available on the property through the length of, the time that we're operating this property as rental housing, which would be in perpetuity. The property management company, as the operator on site of the development post-construction, would make sure that that agreement was renewed, that if there were issues with the cars, they would call the Car2Go folks, or Zipcar folks, or whoever the organization is. But the property itself, the owner would enter into the agreement with that company.
Okay. Okay, that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ira, any questions?
With the car share, I know that NHP has other projects around the country. Have you done the car share anywhere?
We have in Washington, in Washington DC.
And not that I'm a doomsayer, but car share is kind of a new thing to the market, semi-new. What if it disappeared, that industry? We'd have to deal with something, I guess.
Yeah, we would have to find a way to provide those shareable cars on the site, even if there were no more
Third
Zipcar
party,
or
right.
Car2Go. And the end of the car sharing management plan alludes to enforcement requirements and penalties, and this agreement is being recorded with the PUD. It's a requirement of us operating the property, so in the event that we wouldn't have that company to provide the agreement anymore, we have to work out another
Okay.
way of addressing.
Okay, all right, Candace, any questions?
Yes, so I was not here in November, so forgive me if I'm going backwards. I'm going back to parking.
Okay.
Was parking considered along Creekside Drive?
It was, and I think we were told by the town, I don't know if it was Public Works specifically, that we could not put parking along Creekside. Because technically it's like that.
Okay.
Technically it's a bike path along Creekside.
It dead ends, but it's.
And that was a hard no. It wasn't like, hey, we can relocate the bike path to another location so that we're not utilizing Main Street for residential parking for this one building. It was just a hard no. Nothing more was.
I don't know how hard the one was.
Sorry, I wasn't. So it wasn't no, it wasn't like absolutely not, but they said, that's a bike path, that's a dedicated easement. It would take a lot to remove that dedication, and we can just have you build new spaces on Main Street. That was the direction of that meeting.
One other question. So the residential across the street, and this is maybe for you all, but did they have, I know those spaces aren't dedicated for that residence, but did they have like a parking plan that included using some of those new spaces?
No,
It was
so
just that they offered to put them in, but they're not required to use for that.
So they're just public spaces.
but overnight parking wouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
So they're sort of similar to the ones in blue we were showing on our diagram.
Gotcha. Okay. And then my last thing is more just a comment, but I'm okay with the snow storage in the setback because there's a water quality feature right by it. I think that's it's just a comment.
Thank you. Jessica? Questions?
I don't know honestly if I have any questions. I do have comments, so I can
Okay.
probably save.
I have a couple
that.
questions here. Okay, so first, and I meant to ask Emily this, but since I forgot, I'll ask you guys, what happened with the trail? Is that a site plan thing? Does that belong in the PUD since it's kind of a,
The creek, is
Yeah.
that what you're referring to? So there's an easement that will be that full 25-foot setback length or distance. There is no trail proposed. It's going to be an easement to allow for potential future access.
okay. but
It's
is
not
that
in the-
somewhere that's required in your code?
So we have the trail and master plans, which shows
Okay,
that the feasibility of actually doing a trail is probably not likely. If anything, it would be maybe gravel or some sort of like soft surface, something like that. But it's just allowing for future or potential future access.
does anything around the trail or that easement belong in the PUD? It is. It is, isn't it? Okay,
Mhm.
sorry.
Yeah, it's in there, and it says when, there's kind of a timeline toward when that easement will be platted, so that that doesn't get lost track of either.
Okay, great, that was my question. And then my other question had to do with, back to the AMIs, sorry. So your project, if it gets LIHTC awarded, with fingers crossed, will be 30 to 60, 30 to 60, 30 to 80.
With an
With an
average,
average of 60.
still higher than 60.
Yep. Okay, so 30 to 60, sorry, 30 to 80 with an average of 60. If that doesn't happen and you build another project, this PUD would allow you to build potentially, let's just say you're building 50 units, so you could build 45 at 80 and another 5 at 100. Right? That's 10% of 50.
Under
Five.
the PUD specifically.
It's like this PUD says,
Zoning document.
I would interpret it that.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Yeah, we could under the PUD. Then
under the PUD, you could build a project that is, let's just say all of them are 80% AMI. And you would have a little leeway to go to 100. And there's no mention of any kind of average or anything. Even though that's not really what you're proposing to build.
right, and so then we'd have to come back to you with a site plan. With those AMIs in them. Moreover, on this site, we have a development agreement with the town. Amendments must be approved by town council. So not only do we have to come back to you for a site plan with those AMIs. and Get approval, we'd have to go before town council to amend a development agreement. And get their approval of that as well.
Got it. And so. Like the whole mention of the development agreement is already in the PUD. So there's no point in even really debating these facts, right? Because it's already been agreed to by council. As it's referenced in this development agreement.
Correct. I mean, you could obviously provide a recommendation to the council, but if they consider modifying the development agreement in the future, they consider.
Okay,
If you wanted to provide feedback.
right. It's just. Yeah, I mean, I guess all I'm saying is that that's already been. Agreed upon.
Out of curiosity, I wouldn't mind just hearing what your take is, just for staff to know, just for future projects and stuff too. If you want to give any specific feedback on what you, if you think it shouldn't have the up to 100%.
Okay,
That's up to you if you want to provide any, like your own opinions.
thank you. All right, I just, thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
Yeah, just to, oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I'm going back to parking, so you go.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, like, just to, for the conversation purposes, like a site plan is a technical review. So if your proposal meets the zoning document, we shall approve it. So it's not that, oh, okay, I wish your AMIs were lower or anything like that. That's why the zoning document in my mind is so important. And you're asking for concessions on ceiling height standards, residential ground floor standards, mixed use standards, parking on Main Street, landscape reduction, non-residential standards, along Main Street. bulk plan encroachment and looking at, like, I read the master plan for this one because my angst after that last meeting grew even more, and I read the master plan. And so, shaky master plan compliance. So to me, this is a project, and I'm sorry I'm giving comments right now, that I can go for if we're in the zoning document at 30 to 80% with the average of 60. So, just gonna put that out there. That's kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
But the zoning document, as high as it is a harder pill to swallow.
Thank you.
Sorry for going to comments.
You're fine. Candace, what was your question?
Are the units gonna be designated parking spaces? Like, do you have like specific, this unit can have a car, this unit can't have a car?
No, we won't designate specific units to have specific parking spaces, but all parking will require a permit. And we can cap the number of permits that are given out to match the number of spaces we have.
Okay, so if all the permits are taken and somebody applies for a unit and they have a car, they have to figure it out.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, just like if you have a pet, and you're looking for a place to rent, it will sort of direct you to properties that are more appropriate for your needs.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we're done with asking questions of the applicant, and now we're gonna move it to public comment. Now is the public comment portion of this hearing. When making comments, please identify yourself for the record by stating your name and your interest in the application. At no time during the public hearing should the public speak directly to the applicant or to other public members and vice versa. All comments must be directed to the commission. Statements should be brief and non-repetitious. Do we have any comments? Come on up to the podium.
My name is Scott Holzer. We live at 75 Beavers Main Street, which is the unit directly next to this building. So we are the most impacted of anyone in the town because it's right next to us. And that being said, specifically, I would like council to ask the applicant, when they put those parking spots in, what happens to all the trees and the drainage ditch? I mean, does all that go away? Does some of that go away? Are we just straightening out the sidewalk to make it fit? I'm really particularly curious about that because right now we have a reasonable buffer from all the traffic that's on Main Street. And with the two new developments going in, that traffic is going to increase substantially. And if we lose that buffer, I mean, the effect on the quality of life on us is, all 6 units, but us in particular, is really dramatic. So I'd like some clarification on what the construction of that parking does to the existing area, please.
So we will have staff reach out to you, appropriate, to give you the clarification on that, okay?
And just to elaborate, part of why it would be better to have Emily reach out to you after the meeting is she can show you the plans, which we're not reviewing tonight. Those will be at a public hearing in the end of the month or in February. So a while down the road, but so Emily will get in touch. And then.
All right, thank you.
Is there any other public comments? I don't see any more in the audience. I don't know if anybody on this.
Like it.
And I don't see anybody online. I will clarify though that this is the planning commission, but not one. Right. Oh, just to clarify in your comment that this is the planning commission, the council is your elected body. Different board. Just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Chris. Have your hand raised. Please speak up if you want to provide public comment.
Chris, you're on mute. If you're trying to speak, we cannot hear you.
And this is Chris Herman. Any comment, Chris? There you are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't get off on mute. Yeah, I just have a comment. My name is Chris Herman. I live at 333B Streamside and have been following this development. I was really encouraged when I saw the first renderings and the underground parking garage. I was really excited about the project. But, as I followed it, and you guys have mentioned just a number of times about just, we're giving so much away. And the parking is what really concerns me. I mean, there's going to be like 63 bedrooms and the 43 parking spaces, 8 of them are shared parking, the street. I just think that the parking is just a real concern for me, along with the other things. And again, all for the workforce housing. I know it's very important, but I don't, if the project doesn't work with underground parking, and I think the one big concession is we've gone from on 0.83 acres up to, I don't know, the mixed use, the way it is right now, if it's 14 units or whatever, we've quadrupled almost the density, which is a big concession. But, maybe this project would be much more attractive at 35 units, but, I understand that gets to be part of the feasibility. And just curious, how we move forward if the town council, if some of these concerns are brought to them, or, and I know you guys have vetted these out and some of you share the same concerns, but I just think we're getting just too aggressive. I mean, workforce housing is very important, but we're just getting too aggressive, I think, in trying to make some of these projects work. So anyway, that was my comment.
Thank you, Chris. As to your question on process, so right now we're doing the zoning document that comes before us, and then we'll go to town council. And there will also be a final site plan application that it will come to us, council, right? Great. So hopefully that answers your question on process.
In the town council meeting has not been finalized, because we need to make sure we need to see how the planning commission ends the meeting with what their recommendation is, if they're ready to make a recommendation before we schedule it. So tentatively, it is probably going to be on January 23rd. But I would ask you to touch base with Emily, the planner, on this a little next week, just to confirm the town council meeting date and time. It won't be any earlier than January 23rd.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now we will close the public comment section of the meeting and move on to the commissioner comments and possibly a motion. So we will start with April again.
Sure. I don't know if I have any different comments on what we've been talking about. I think we all kind of feel the same way, that we're doing a lot of trade-offs to get this project, but we know that we need it so badly in town. So for right now, I feel mostly comfortable with the plan. And I think I'm willing to move forward. So that's it for me.
Thank you, April. Ira?
Yeah, I feel similarly. I know there's a number of bullet points here that staff recommends for approval. I am in agreement with all of those bullet points: ceiling height, residential mixture. I think we know the whole list. I had opportunity to serve on the board on Long Island Housing Partnership, which was we were related to National Housing Partnership. I have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to pull off what they're showing. I don't feel a bait and switch happening in front of me. I think that and we've had these conversations before, where these guiding principles of a thriving economy, that document, that kind of boilerplate that we go through all the time. And we've said that some of these projects, they're really not paying homage to those directives. And I think that this project is sorely needed and really does speak to a thriving and beneficial economy. So for those reasons, I'm in agreement and I'm excited to see it move forward.
Okay, Candace?
I would agree that I think the project is good. I still have I see everything on paper, but the parking in reality is still hard for me to wrap my head around, but I think in general, I'm supportive of the project.
And Jessica?
Yeah, so I appreciate all the work that's been done on this project. I'm supportive of you know, as it was pitched with that site plan. And I think really important to making that parking work is those lower AMIs. Because if you're looking at, you know, a 1-bedroom unit or a 2-bedroom unit at 60% AMI, you know, it's a vastly different price than that 2-bedroom unit at 100% AMI. And you might need to get roommates to share, and you might have a different income. You know, it might not be that demographic that's using that car share. So everything that we've gotten, like, I agree, you know, with the comments that have been stated, if we add a condition, you know, that the PUD is amended to include the, you know, the 30 to 80% with an average of 60% AMI, it doesn't, you know, somebody can come back and say, hey, we didn't get the LIHTC, we need to change this. And then we say, great, now let's change some of these concessions as well and make the project fit what's being pitched. I mean, that would be sort of what I'd like to discuss moving forward. That would be my recommended condition if you all are amenable to discussing that.
Great. I sort of agree in that I feel like we're being a little too flexible, I guess is maybe the right word, but I'm okay with 80% AMI, but I agree with what Jessica is saying in that once you get to the higher AMIs rentals, you're starting to serve different demographics that are probably gonna have cars. And all of a sudden, the site plan starts to not work as well as it is intended for the lower AMIs. So that's my concern. I also, if we're gonna entertain this whole thing about, let's go up to 100 for 10% of the units, then I want to include something about an average, not going over a certain AMI amount. There's nothing here about an average, so you're allowing to go up to 100, but I feel like, but I don't want the average to go over 8. So I don't know, that's just my reaction to it. So yeah, I do want us to discuss that as a commission. Whether you guys agree, disagree, would want to support either one, or I don't know, Candace, what do you think?
Well, I think there was mention that average is 60, but is that not in the
It's
zoning?
not in the PUD. The PUD just says serving households up to 80% of the area median income, period, and then 5 or 10% would be allowed to go, or minor deviations from this area would be allowed to go up to 100.
And town usually looks at a minor deviation of 10%, so 10%. Interpret it 10%.
Okay, yeah. So there's nothing but an average, you're just allowing that going up to 100, and then you're kind of creating this situation with higher AMI households that might just have a car, because they just do. So
Yeah, to me, it's just a different project. I don't know if I would be as flexible on all of the other standards if in the zoning document all along, I was aware it was going to be put in as 80 to 100, because this whole conversation has been talking about this extreme need. Like we talked about the housing needs assessment, like that's what was shown to us. You know, this is the need that we have. This is the need we have. This is the project we're going to do. Maybe. But
Yeah.
we're gonna ask for all the concessions based on that project. So that's just kind of where it's a harder sell
and we're gonna
for me.
memorialize it in a zoning
In
document.
a zoning document, you can come in and you can modify a zoning document. You don't get the LIHTC, you just come in and you say, we didn't get the LIHTC, we need to modify this. It's a relatively straightforward process. It could be processed in how many months, weeks, 2 months
We're
from
gonna
start
end
to
up
finish
being
at the
another-
most? How much?
I'd say
Okay. 3 months.
Either way, you'd have to do another site plan, so
Yeah.
probably, or.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the zoning document that was the enormous holdup.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything is a delay if you're a developer. I absolutely understand that. And I'm not trying to put any more quote roadblocks in front of affordable housing. But those are my thoughts.
Ira, what do you think? Do you think you'd be supportive of
I would,
ratcheting that down a little bit, what's in the PUD?
I would go to the applicant and ask them what they want to put in there for an average, and then we could see if we like what they say.
Well, no, this is up to you to make a decision on what is before you, which is what's before you.
Well, there's no average in the document.
Correct.
So what I'm just saying is if you want an average in the document, I would ask them what they think they want to put in there for an average.
But I'm asking you what you think,
Oh,
based on what we've said.
I think, I think it's been
But the
said,
project is 30 to 60% AMI.
30 to 80.
30 to 80.
With
and
an average of 60. So average of 60 is really, that's something that came from them.
Well, that's something that's required by the LIHTC finance.
So I'm happy to put average of 60 if that's going to make it fly. You know, I have been reading, and there's a whole movement that these parking requirements, as we've had in the past, we are here in newer territory with a much more generous parking requirement. But there's a lot of studies out there that see vacant parking lots in downtowns and everywhere, and they've really cut into the amount of building that can be done, and the parking goes unused. It's also been researched that parking requirements are an easy way for people to be NIMBYs by saying, we need more parking, therefore you can't build these projects in my backyard. So I've kind of followed that. So I'm not really that concerned because I've heard if these people don't, if tenants don't have a parking spot, they've got to fend for themselves. And with rental units, I don't know that, and that was going to be a question if there was a limit as to how many people per unit. I know there's bedrooms that would be built, but that would be another question I would ask at another time. But if they're saying, if the proposition is an average of 30 to 80, if the AMI is going to go from 30 to 80 with an average of 60, I would be okay with putting 60 in the document.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
kind of, yeah.
Kind of.
60%, I think. We heard you say, do you feel like it's important to put in exactly what they're proposing, 30 to 80 with an average of 60? Or do you feel like, all right, we'll allow this 80%, maybe 10% goes to 100, but we include an average of
60,
So I agree, it's an
That's
average of
really-
60.
average of 60.
okay.
I mean, if you have 100, if there's one or two at 100, they still got to come to an average of 60.
I agree. Okay, April, what do you think about what we're talking about?
Yeah, I agree. I think being specific helps us. So I think if we want to add that information into the document or ask the applicant to do that, then we should ask them to do that.
So you'd be supportive of a modification that we add the average of the
60,
unit be at 60,
yes,
overall average at 60.
yes.
Great, I'm in support of that too, so can I get a motion?
Candace,
I think I would err on the side of being flexible in the zoning document and doing it in the site plan, but I think everyone else has spoken.
The AMIs don't come up.
So to clarify, it was mentioned by the applicant that they would look at, you look at AMI as the site, but it's not part of a site plan review or your purview during that.
Is it part of the development?
It's the development agreement with the town council.
Okay,
And then it is what's in the community.
okay.
So.
I would
or they
be
come
okay
back
with
and
the-
Modify it. That's just.
I'd be okay with the flexibility in the zoning and let them discuss with council during the development review, but.
Okay, because our job is to provide a recommendation to the council on this PUD document. And so, and it's helpful if we all agree.
but we don't have.
We don't have to.
I'm not
It's helpful.
against it, but I think flexibility is zoning.
And I think Emily, so I think what I would recommend is someone makes a motion with what it sounds like a couple are on board with. And then if that motion was approved with a recommendation from council that they consider an average, if they could consider continuing to allow the minor deviation up to 100%, I think I heard, but with an average of 60%. But I think, and then Emily will present that was not 100% consensus, that's a motion that moved forward. And that express the different, the kind of parking, Iris perspective on the parking, and then your perspective that you kind of feel like the town council has the capability of making that. That would be my recommendation, is just if you get a motion, if it passes, Emily will, during her presentation to town council, explain.
Okay, or we could make a motion proposing our recommendation as all me too, and see how that goes.
And if you don't want to support it, you could also vote against it. If you don't like the condition, it could be a new motion. It gets more.
I'm not super passionate.
That's why I wanted to, I felt like that's what I was.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm not so passionate to like take it away, but that's just my stand.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Okay, so, yeah, so this is what I heard. Let me know if you want me to modify that.
well, what is maximum AMI average?
The average AMI,
Yeah, I don't know that we need maximum there.
yeah, that's true, the average.
So maximum is fair.
Yeah, I guess not to keep it at.
The states that the average AMI.
Not to exceed 60% for the property.
Yeah. Not 2 weeks, shall not exceed. Okay. Great. Does somebody want to propose a motion?
I'm gonna read this. What?
Okay, with respect to file number REZ 230002, I move the proposed rezoning to PUD request meets the criteria necessary for approval, and the planning commission hereby recommends approval with the following conditions to town council for the rezoning application located at 101 West Main Street, lot B1, West Frisco 70 sub number 2, with the following condition. That the PUD plan be amended to state that the average AMI shall not exceed 60% for the property.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Emma, do you want to call the vote? Sure. Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Day? I think I'm saying no, just because I think the 60% is restricted in the zoning. Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Commissioner Lesmans,
yes.
Commissioner Tain,
Yes.
Motion carries. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right? Yeah. She voted for it.
That was 4?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah,
Okay.
great. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Next thing on the agenda is talking commissioner updates.
First, thank you, everybody, for getting your I-9 documents. I know that was a quick turnaround and scramble a little bit. That came through, so we appreciate that. And that would be great then. So then a couple of other quick things that we do have 2 items at our next meeting, so we will have a planning commission next meeting. Since we have 2 items, we'll provide dinner at that meeting. So if anyone has any great ideas, they're welcome to email Kyle or myself and let us know. Here, I want something a little different than our standards. And then we've got, I know you kind of have been, some of you got texts from Kyle and some of you have had emails now, so we're transitioning. Cheryl is still employed with us. We love Cheryl. We're trying to shift all the permit tech more onto her because she's been really overwhelmed with the amount of work the last couple of years. So pulling planning commission off of her plate has allowed us to let her focus more on catching up more with the building and planning applications and submittals and things like that. So Kyle is our new planning commission admin. We are really lucky. I don't think I've done an introduction for him yet, but he actually was working in the town clerk's office. And he also was previously with the police as the CSO office, community service officer. So he also in community development is in charge of our code enforcement person. It's because he has the background of doing that in the town, and he also is in charge of our STRs, in management of STRs. So he's taking on kind of administrative realm, but also some leadership realm in our department also. But point being, you will communicate with Kyle about meetings instead of Cheryl from here on out. So, okay. Ira, you look like you had a question.
No, my wife was asking me about dinner.
Oh, tonight?
No, no, because I'm cooking dinner as we're sitting.
Oh, no, got it. Are we all invited?
If you want cream of cauliflower and white bean soup.
We won't get in trouble. Yeah, just, I know I had a really, you've been getting a lot of, information files, so I wanted to let you know kind of why we are in that transition in our office. This coming Tuesday at town council is the code amendments that the planning commission recommended against for local health. So that's going forward this Tuesday of Wednesdays. But I think we did a good job of, in our staff report to town council, we kind of broke down the main concerns in logic that planning commission has. And their kind of logic behind it, your logic behind it. And we're gonna do the same thing in the presentation, and we also included the minutes from your meeting in the minute. So we are hoping that we get some council good, clear information. Discussion on it for them to consider on Tuesday. So that's a Tuesday's town council meeting. And then I don't need an answer right now, but I want you all to think about kind of stepping up if you have the time and interest for 2024. We'll be kicking off our housing strategic plan and financial, it'll include financial modeling and interactive build out. So it really help us decide how we should be spending our money on housing projects. Do we develop more on vacant land? Do we try to buy more land? Do we try to buy units? That's kind of what we're really hoping is that financial aspect at the end of it to get some help for town staff and town council. But we obviously would like, it will be coming to planning commission to provide regular updates, but we think it would be great to probably have a planning commission on kind of our core subcommittee on that plan. So just kind of keep that in mind and think about if you have the time and interest in participating in that subcommittee over the next few months. That'll be about a 6-month project. And then our comprehensive plan also would be great. Obviously, we'll be bringing forward updates and questions to planning commission, but if it would be great to have an actual planning commission in our subcommittee for the comp plan too. So looking for interest over the next couple of weeks, I'll ask who's interested, and then we can talk about it. I don't want more than 2 per committee, because we don't want to get into quorums and things like that. But if there was 2 people who really wanted it, we could probably consider it. Ideally, just 1 would be fine. So representative. So just kind of keep that in your head as we move forward over the next couple of weeks on getting those projects kicked off. And the only other thing I wanted to address was code amendments. And I wanted to recognize we've started throwing a bunch of code amendments at you. And we have heard and understand your feedback of having you discuss those items prior to it actually coming forward to you for an official recommendation to town council. So knowing that we are going to, in the next couple of months, have some proposed code amendments of primarily cleanup items, but we really want to look at our exterior lighting, things that council has asked or the community has asked. Some of those we will be coming for discussion. Some of them I may just talk to Kelsey ahead of time and get her guidance. For example, Public Works wants to do some cleanup to like the grading part of town code. And we don't know if we really need to bring that forward to a discussion, but I think it'll help if maybe I touch base at least with Kelsey as the chair and get her feedback in the future of what she thinks we should bring. So I wanted to recognize that we've heard your feedback and recognize it's very valid. So we'll be better as staff about trying to bring up discussion before you actually have to make the same night that you have to make a recommendation. And we're also trying to not schedule for town council anymore until we've gotten through the planning commission meeting so that you're not feeling like you're almost dismissed because it's already moving forward ahead of you. So that was all I had. Great. Yeah. Any questions from any of you or anything from any other staff?
On Rainbow Court or Centura?
So Rainbow Court, we met with a prospective buyer recently. Right before the holidays, and we are waiting to hear if they move forward. If they move forward, they would actually be utilizing different uses a little bit for commercial, but same building exterior and same layout, and same residential units. So we are waiting to see if they close, and if so, they want to get going right away, or if they go under contract. Sorry, I don't know. They're not even under contract. That we have not heard they've gone under contract. Point being, there is, at least we were excited to have a meeting with someone who was very eager to talk about it and had a really great plan for the site. So haven't heard since that meeting, but it was only about a month ago. And then I have not personally heard anything about this Centura site. They are probably getting pretty close to expiration, I would guess by now. So it's probably been close to 3 years or.
You guys were talking about this in church, I don't know which one
Oh,
that is.
so on School Road, the middle
Ah,
school.
Yeah, I didn't know that was zoned for housing, or there was a site plan approved for housing.
Yes, I believe it was
And all this.
2
Ah,
years ago. They might have a year left, so.
Before I started, so.
yeah,
And it was
definitely.
after I left, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe the
Yeah.
approximate 3-year point, I feel like.
Right, because he was probably in between us.
That's what I think. Anything else? No. Okay. Thanks for your feedback tonight. We don't need, I don't want to discuss the items, we can't anyway, but I think you all provided really great comments and good job leading. Thanks. So, yeah, nice job.
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Taxes.
Anybody opposed? No, I don't see any, just passes unanimously.
Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in
Thank
person
you.
next
Bye,
month.
thanks, April. Have a good
Bye.
night.